third session with Felicity Warner, and Felicity and I have been talking about astrology and the dying process. And Felicity is one of the world's leading. I don't think you probably like using the word expert, do you, Felicity?
Not really, no.
The world, whatever, on sacred oils, the role of sacred oils in the dying process and also in the grieving process. But I'm very interested in the whole concept of Myrrhophores. So Felicity's going to talk about that too. So Felicity, should we start? Let's start with the Myrrhophores and what this means, and to explain what that is to anyone that doesn't understand what the word is.
Absolutely. Oh, what a joy. Absolutely, yes. So myrophores are literally women who work with myrrh or women who offer myrrh. Sometimes they're also called mistresses of the oils. And so these are both really old descriptions of the role, which is now I hope being brought back into modern times, especially within the death and dying work that you were just talking about, Sue. But for anyone who hasn't come across them before, it's a very age-old lineage that I especially am representative of. I was going to say holder, but even that sounds too grand. I'm doing away with anything grand when it comes to Myrrhophores. I want to be very real about the work that we're able to do. But going back in time, the most famous one probably was Mary Magdalene. And as we all know, she had her big flask of spikenard, which is one of the sacred oils that I work with still today with the dying. And she anointed Jesus's feet just before the crucifixion at the Last Supper. And so she was very well known as a Myrrhophore, but there were others within her circle as well. Mary of Bethany, Mary, the mother of Jesus. And the thought is that they were all very experienced priestesses, in fact, who understood about the qualities of the oils. So these oils had all of the oils have frequencies associated with them, which work on the subtle bodies of people. So they work at a very deep level of soul and spirit, and they come in to realign and rebalance. But these priestesses, and they go way back before Mary Magdalene. I mean, they are thought to go back even before the temples of Isis and ancient
Wow.
Egypt. I mean, really long way back. They were experts in transition. They knew about consciousness and energy and how the physical body was just a vehicle for the soul and spirit to come in and experience life. So they are the most fascinating group of women practitioners, and they were mainly women. And they knew all about death and dying. So I've been doing this work now, and this will shock you, Sue. Well, it shocks me anyway, because I realize I have been doing this now for 50 years.
50 years as a Myrrhophore.
50. It's the big 50 this year.
Whoa.
And that is a blooming long time. And to just tell you that I feel I've only just scratched the surface of it.
It's so interesting about the whole concept of myrrh, because that was one of the gifts that the three kings brought the baby Jesus.
Absolutely. And they knew a thing or two. They were the magi, they were the magicians, they were the wise men.
And
They also, of course, bought frankincense, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And they brought them because they were the most exquisite gifts to bring a child that had a destiny as powerful as this baby had. So the gold for sovereignty, obviously, but the myrrh for being able to have a connection with the divine, and the sandalwood, the frankincense rather, for wisdom and for understanding the nature of life. So these, if you think about it, those gifts for a child with that destiny were
Yeah.
absolutely phenomenal.
I think it's so interesting with frankincense because it's used in certainly with all the Catholic liturgies.
Yeah.
Is it and I've had the experience myself. It works on the olfactory centers,
Oh, it
which
does.
takes you out of out of the ordinary into the extraordinary.
Yes.
And I find that, and I've been to Catholic churches when there's been a very huge what do you call it? Those immense
A
canisters.
crucible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're swinging to and fro with
Oh,
incense, and you're just not. You're just somewhere else. It's
amazing, isn't it?
fantastically magical.
Yeah,
And I think
absolutely.
that's what the Catholic Church and its liturgy and its ritual still has. I mean, whatever you think about the church, but that connection to taking you beyond yourself is so part of that something else that
Absolutely.
the table, which with the Protestants we don't do that.
We don't. Sadly, we're the poor relation when it comes to understanding.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of problems we know in the church, and we're not,
We're
obviously
not going there. But
not talking about that. We're just
yeah,
talking about this.
absolutely. And the other religion as well, which is very aligned to working with the oils. And they also have a day of the myrrh bearers that they celebrate, which is April the 6th. We've just had it, is the Greek Orthodox Church. And of course, they really, really, really celebrate these amazing women who, again, around Easter time are celebrated because they knew how to work not only with the spikenard before the crucifixion, which was part of preparing Christ for what was coming up ahead of him, but also for their knowledge of working with oils and spices after death.
Yes,
And the translation has been that, oh, well, this is all to help preserve the body, blah, blah, blah. But in fact, within the tradition that I'm part of, they were also to do with the ascension process and the expansion of consciousness coming following death. So there's a lot more going on with all of these stories that we know so well.
absolutely. And we were talking about before we started recording, talking about the Pentecostal fire and
Yeah.
the receiving of the wisdom. I mean,
Yeah.
the Bible is called the Holy Spirit, which came 50 days after
Yes.
the death of Jesus, and Mary Magdalene was part of that. She was apparently, I mean, we don't know for sure, but
Don't
that's
know for
the story
sure.
in the Bible that they were all saying, well, what happens now? And then in that moment, I don't know if she's using sacred oils, who knows, but they received the
Yeah.
Pentecostal fire,
Yeah,
part of the Holy
absolutely.
Spirit.
Yeah, absolutely. And certain sacred oils are said to have the properties of that. And we can be doing that today if we know how to be doing it, which I do know a bit about. So
Yeah, well,
yes.
it's so interesting. All of this is so relevant at the moment with Neptune moving into Aries. Neptune's spirituality, Aries is fire, and that's such for me such an astrological symbology of the Pentecostal fire. If we allow that to happen, I mean, there's different levels of how we are going to be experiencing Neptune in Aries, but that could be one of them. Obviously, there's deceit and false gurus, and all of that is going to come up. But I think for me, it's a really interesting time to be talking about sacred oils because especially with Saturn coming up, because Saturn manifests,
Oh,
it makes things real. So there's going to be a lot of, I think, profound, I don't know if spiritual is the right word, but maybe raising in consciousness with the oil being part of that. Oil, Neptune, water, liquid.
Yes. Yep. Well, that all makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
Wow.
so how do you, so when you're working with Myrrh, my understanding is Myrrh is very much about the transition it from one state of being to the other. And I find it really interesting that a lot of people now are talking increasingly about consciousness after what happens to consciousness after death. Do people get stuck if, let's say, that they're not a believer, they don't, they don't have a faith, and they
Mhm.
can be very distressed at the end of their life. So just talk us through how oils can maybe help soothe the path of the dying.
Absolutely. Well, this is my favorite subject, of course. And you'll probably have to stop me because there's so much to share about it. But again, just to put in some context, so to help describe why certain oils come in at certain times. So the model that I use as a soul midwife is that dying consists of stages. It's not just one event and bong, you've popped your clogs. It's a series of stages that develops over time. Interestingly, even if it's a sudden death, some people say, oh yeah, but so and so had a heart attack, that wasn't going to happen for them. In fact, on the inner levels, the same stages will have happened, whatever. So we have the first stage, and these four stages are represented by the elements, really. And the elements, in a way, are are the way that our bodies get filled with spirit and soul. So when we're being born, we come in with four elements, and when we go, those elements start to withdraw. So the first one is earth, and that's our stability, our grip on the earth, and how we experience it, and our strength.
Yeah.
And as we get a little bit closer to death, that earth element withdraws and dissolves. And there's an amazing oil that we use called Fragonia. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's a beautiful oil. And unlike many of the oils that I work with as a Myrrhophore, which are ancient oils, this is actually a really modern one. And it's only been harvested for maybe 10, 15 years, but it came in on this wave of new consciousness around holistic dying. So I love the way it's come in as a newcomer, and it's Australian. And the great thing about this oil is that all the chemical constituents within it are all in balance with each other, because most oils have a group here of 10 constituents and then 5 down here. This is all in balance. And that gives us the clue, because when we work with Fragonia, if we anoint with it, I'll talk about anointing in a minute, what it does is it brings everything into balance in the body. So in the earth stage, people are getting a bit wobbly and they're having those little falls that people have. Oh, I've had a silly little fall. I didn't know, classic as
Yeah.
people are getting a bit older. And Fragonia will make up the shortfall of the element withdrawing and just bring everything nicely back into balance again. And in doing that, it re-empowers people as well
Yeah.
to feel more like themselves again. It's a
It's so
wonderful oil.
it's so interesting because this sort of sense of withdrawing or earth for me is very Saturn. Saturn, we have, that ultimate control. He's all about the control and, and if that's being withdrawn or he's stepping back, I can understand, this these sense of little falls or not
Yes.
being quite present or feeling out of control. It's really
Yes,
interesting.
exactly. It's that withdrawing. I love that
Yeah.
stepping back
Yeah.
phase, because it is like that, and it leaves you a bit vulnerable and a bit fragile, and you're not quite sure where you usually are in the order of things. So it's a really characteristic stage, and Fragonia is just brilliant for working with people and getting them through that stage well. And then the next stage, which sounds silly, but it's my favorite stage, is the water stage. And so that's all about all the deep unconscious and subconscious stuff within us, and all those.
That's Neptune.
Yeah, Neptune. It's really about, it's so Neptunian. It's all about, and it's about dissolving, and it's about shape shifting and memories coming up. And it's also the time and the dying when people's soul wounds, traumas are being exposed, and they come up from the depths, just like sort of Neptune coming up from the depths. They come up in order to be released, because the big idea about dying well is to release all that baggage that you've accrued over a lifetime before you actually go onwards on the journey. And so we work with an amazing oil called Ravensara, and that is awfully clever. It doesn't smell awfully nice, but you work with that and suddenly all like bubbles coming from the depths, all the stuff comes up, but not in a horrible, traumatic, racking sort of way. They just come up and then just go ping, ping, ping and release.
Sounds a bit like mushrooms.
Oh,
I did.
okay. Interesting.
Does. Yeah, that kind of coming up and bloom, bloom, that's that's like a psilocybin experience.
Oh, I love that. Well, there's a good conversation to be had about that one day then. So Ravensara would be the oil there. And then we suddenly switch a bit in the dying process, because people have been getting a bit older, losing their balance, then all their memories are coming up from childhood. But there will come a time where they're really accelerating, and they're entering deeper and further into dying. And so the next stage we would call the fire stage, which is much closer to death. And it's when people are really, really uncomfortable in their bodies, and they may have what clinically is termed as terminal agitation.
Is it that stage where people are plucking
Plucking at the bedclothes, and they're restless, and they're irritated and agitated? And it's also the stage where a very great characteristic is the dark night of the soul. And it's that time when the ego is dissolving. So it's not holding them anymore with their narratives and their belief systems. It's going out the window. It's all going. And they can feel incredibly rejected, alone, fearful. And it's a really hard phase to watch somebody else in. But if we're the watchers and the caretakers, we do know it will move. They will go through it and out the other side. But the oil that we use for that is called Niauli. And it's a terrifying oil. If you're sensitive and you hold a bottle of it, you sort of boom, like that. You can feel the energy in it. Take the top off and sniff it. It smells disgusting, I have to warn you. But it's got such power in it. The frequency in it actually agitates. And it agitates the frequency in the person in order to move through it quickly. It's an agitant. And it burns off all the dross that we no longer need. It burns it, so we become husks.
So it sounds like it's very attuned to Mars.
Yes.
Mars burns.
It burns, it's powerful, it's don't mess with me. Takes no prisoners, absolutely. And you can't negotiate with it. It's gonna happen. Yes. So that again is a very important stage in the dying process. And as I say, it's horrible when you're in it. You can't do anything other than move through it. But it's also transformational, because you are in the fire, but you come out of it a different person. Your consciousness is changed. And you then go into the air stage, which is all to do with the breath and breathing. And It's often when people have what used to be called the death rattle, you know, this accumulation of mucus in the throat and the breathing changes. But on the subtle realms, there is a beautiful new picture appearing of this sort of purity of consciousness, which has got rid of all that stuff now by going through the process. It's very alchemical, this really. And at the end of the air stage, there is this transcendent moment. Not always seen, sadly, by relatives. Some people say, well, I don't think my mum ever got that. She just seemed to be in hell all the way through. But it should be there, even if it's for half a second at the last moment.
That often happens, doesn't it?
And that often happens. And the oil that we would use for that is called elemi. And I love elemi. It's so beautiful. It's like golden lace. It's very sort of fine and very beautiful. And in Arabic, elemi stands for heaven and earth. So it's the sort of the oil that connects as above, so below.
Absolutely.
And it's a wonderful oil.
Isn't that just absolutely fabulous?
Yeah.
Can you use these oils in your everyday life, or if
Yes,
you can?
you bet you can.
Let's say you're going through a big trauma and you're needing to work that out, and then you could sort of almost go through the four stages.
Yes,
Yeah,
you do. Now,
yeah,
I'm so pleased you asked me that,
yeah.
because that again makes me really excited, because we're all going through these cycles all the time, all the time until we die.
Yes.
And so these oils, and there are various other ones as well that I use when I work with people who they're not actually dying at the moment, although we all are, but they're just going through something which is a process and a journey. So, I mean, grief is a big one. You know, grief, you know, it's massive, and it affects all of us, and it is a real
Yeah.
journey to go through. But there's an oil for that, which is violet oil, and it is so brilliant because it just, the frequency of the violet matches the frequency of the raw grief. It meets it, they mesh together, and you get this wonderful sort of healing peace that comes over. And I make the violet oil from outside my window here. I have a hedgerow, and I have violets growing all over it in the springtime. At the moment, it's purple with violets. So I make the violet oil and I send out hundreds of bottles until it's all gone, because people just need it. And there it is. Yeah.
I think it's just so it's having gone through some traumatic experiences myself. This sense of the time of burning off, the time of walking the burning ground, the time where you feel absolutely, totally as if you have been abandoned by the universe. Forget just God, the whole
Yes.
lot's gone, and you're just alone with this intense pain. I wish I'd had the violet oil then,
Oh,
because it would have
yeah.
just soothed my soul.
It
Yeah,
would, it
yeah,
would. And it finds its own way of working for each particular person.
yeah,
And that's another thing to mention, is that these oils they are forms of consciousness. They're not just a little bit of liquid in a bottle. They contain the God particle in a way.
yeah.
They have a way of teaching us and of working specifically with us and our own needs. And there's a huge intelligence in that that's
And
coming
I
through the
suppose they
plant.
would be completely attuned with the planet or the fixed stars or whatever. I
Yeah,
mean, the more I'm exploring how astrology works, the more I'm utterly amazed by the vibration, the vibrational energy. And and when this is what we're talking about, because the oil's vibrational
yeah,
energy as well.
yes. They are.
Everything's vibrational, and
Everything.
therefore it must all interconnect somehow
It
with
does.
consciousness.
It does.
Yeah,
It's just so incredibly brilliantly clever,
isn't it? Isn't it?
isn't it? It just
Clever. Ah,
is. It's amazing,
and it
breathtaking.
is absolutely as above, so below. So I'm fascinated by that.
Me too.
Yeah. God, it's so exciting, isn't it? When you start getting into the nuances of and the ancient crafts, because this is alchemy.
It's,
It
it's
really is
me.
ancient alchemy
It
working at its
is.
height.
Yeah, it is, Sue. And I think that's exciting as well, because this is a moment in time where all those ancient crafts and the alchemy are linking in with modern quantum physics.
Yes.
It's suddenly all being matched together and proved, if you I mean, I hate the thought of this proof thing
Yeah.
going on here
Yeah.
because we know it in our bones so much, but it is all showing that the whole thing was based on something incredibly
Ancient.
clever
Well,
and
it's
ancient.
interesting, isn't it? That it's all really the resurgent is happening so strongly as Pluto moves into Aquarius.
Oh,
So
yeah.
interesting, isn't it? And then we have this big shift of Neptune then moving to Aries, which is fire. Aquarius is air. Aries is fire, and then we've got Saturn coming up to join Neptune in fire, and then we've got yes, we've got Uranus. Uranus is going to be moving into Gemini, which is air, information. It's going to explode with information, and we're all concentrating on AI and phones and social media, but maybe
Yes.
this is going to be bringing back sudden insights about the ancient ways which were there, and I find it fabulous
Mm.
that the work of Graham Hancock is beginning to really come to the fore. The fact that I was listening to Matthew Lacroix
Oh,
yesterday. I think he's a young man who's doing extraordinary work about in ancient sites, Göbekli Tepe, and what has possibly, we don't know yet, been discovered about the pyramids. That hasn't been verified yet. But boy, if it is,
yeah.
whoa, we're sitting on such ancient, advanced knowledge, and they knew. And I was
They knew.
watching a video the other day about sorry, the
And
cones. Old brain here. The cones and how and this huge cone is absolutely planted outside the Vatican. It's huge, and it's right outside. And Matthew Lacroix was saying that the cone, because of the way it's been created, it is the symbol of ancient wisdom. All of it feeding in layers and layers and layers of wisdom. So that's why it's outside the Vatican. I mean, I was just blown away by all of this.
that's extraordinary.
Yeah,
I have to go
I
and look
think he's a very
him up.
cool chap. And, people like Greg Braden are talking about it. He's very respected. These are not nutty people.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, exactly. They haven't just sat in the bath and made it up. No.
not. I mean, there's lots of them, but you
Yes.
have to pick and choose. But I do feel that I think this is Saturn and Neptune coming together, that there will be ancient knowledge coming up from the bottom of the ocean.
Yes. Yes.
Interesting in those ancient times that the pyramids were that there was water all around the pyramids. You can see it, it's all where the Sphinx is. You can see where the water has been.
Gosh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so if this is true, I just got this snapshot image. If this is true, of the pyramids being like an oil rig.
Oh,
That's what I got
wow.
a snapshot of. Yeah, it was just like bang in my head. I went, ooh. So we'll
gosh.
just have to wait and see. But I think the oils are going to play a hugely important role in this.
Yeah, I
Releasing
do too.
the fear of death, Felicity.
Sorry, what was that?
Releasing us from the fear of death.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that is such a massive thing to be working with at the moment. A fear of transition
Fear of transition.
in its entirety, actually, but fear of death, yes. And I think we're almost in a moment where people are going to begin to see the actual illusion that death is. And that might be a step too far for some people watching this, but death isn't what we were brought up to think it was when we were kids at school.
Absolutely.
It just isn't.
Mm.
And I know from having worked in this field, as you have, for so many years, that it is certainly not the end. I just.
Gosh, no. Well, being an astrologer, I mean, it's really, I mean, I knew about this when I was doing all the end of life research. I mean, it was so clear that that something was happening that was more than just, the physicality of the shutting down of the body systems and then
Yeah,
nothing. It was so obvious that it wasn't that.
yeah,
And being an astrologer and talking to people about using the astrology chart to explore the archetypal story that they're carrying with them, have carried in with them,
yes,
and working with that and just exploring the possibility of another consciousness, or they're bringing through a consciousness. It isn't just nature nurture. There is something more than that as well.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
it's nature nurture definitely, but I think
yes.
the
But there's,
astrology also the
yeah,
planetary energies bring in another dimension of consciousness.
yes,
I'm sure they do.
totally, absolutely, totally. Yeah, there is so much to be exploring, and yet, as I was saying when we started, I've been doing this for so many years now. And when I first began, because I was kind of headhunted to do this work by a very difficult, strange old woman in Denmark. And I was taken to visit her, and I walked in and she really sized me up and down. She did not know if she liked me at all. I was terrified of her because she was so austere and fierce. And anyway, long story short, she got me working with a few oils just over a cup of tea, and she was watching everything about me, literally everything. And then she decided I was probably worth taking a tiny bit of a risk with in teaching the oils too. And in those days, and then eventually, I mean, 3 years later, she was talking to me about the nature of the soul, the nature of the psyche, the nature of life, the mystery of death, all those big things, to this teenager, really. And talking about Mary Magdalene. And in those days, of course, no one ever was talking about Mary Magdalene. It was just, she was just in the Bible as the whore and the
Oh,
prostitute.
yeah.
And but she said to me, this woman, Luce de Grasse, her name was, she said, one day this, the oils and this work is going to be so important for the future of mankind, And it was, I thought, blimey, it's great if it is, but I have no idea at the moment, age 15 or so. But now I can really see that time has come, just as she said it would. And so it's very interesting, isn't it, how it's all accelerated.
The time is now.
Yeah, is
No,
now. Yeah, yeah,
it just is. You can see it everywhere. The planetary movements, what's happening there, the big shift this year of, all the outer planets going from far, going into fire and air signs. It's just everything is shouting
now.
now,
Yeah,
everything. And it's going
yeah,
to massively speed up. We've got a lot of bumpy stuff to go through. But I
yes,
think the more that we bring back these ancient crafts and these ancient sort of, they're not even medicines, are they? They go beyond medicine. It's something else.
Beyond, yeah,
The
absolutely.
ancient wisdom of transition
Yes.
can really help people to release their fear of death.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And to go through death embracing it.
Exactly. Just go, yes.
Yes, exactly. And to see it for what it is. It's a very exciting time, really.
And being grateful for the body that you live in. You know, our home, our body, isn't it? We might
Yeah,
not like
it
it very
is.
much, but do you
We
know what?
should
Home.
talk to it every day. Hello, body. You're doing a great job. Sorry, I've been a bit rude to you over the years. But I'm really going to love you from now on because you're keeping me here at the moment. Yes.
Without it, that's for sure. And you know, I think the great it's going to be an extraordinary adventure to release the physical body. I had a very extraordinary experience just very quickly the other night. I was doing some night walking, and I had I'm always thinking about death and dying, so it's just part of my consciousness. And I was walking along, and suddenly I walked out of my body, and there was a clatter. I went, oh my God. And it felt like and I was straight back in my body again. But in that moment, I saw my body like an old a suit of armor. It just fell
Wow.
off, and I was going forward. I thought, oh my God, this is what it's going to be like. It was
How
really
amazing.
interesting. And then bing bang. But you know, because I'm so engaged with my whole dying process and the dying process, I think I'm constantly shown what it might be like.
Yeah, I would agree. Me too.
Yes.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Lucy, is there anything you'd like to say about the oils before we close?
I suppose there is a tiny bit. It's been on my mind quite a bit recently. Is I think the idea of sacred oils has really caught on, which is wonderful because they are for us all to be working with, and we can all work with them. There are certain protocols and etiquettes and things that we need to be aware of when we're working with the energy field of another person. That goes without saying. But I think there's a little bit of a sort of romantic movement growing up around it that it all has to be very sort of um, cloaked in veils, and you have to have the right sort of, I don't know, um, amulet on, and it, to me, it really is not like that. It's a very, very down to earth, very practical way of working. It is old and it has got magic attached to it, but we need to be really grounded with it and really, really work with it in a modern and grounded way to be able to be bringing this out to other people and not put
Not
it all.
the floaty woo-woo stuff.
Yeah, don't do the, yeah,
Yeah,
you,
yeah,
if you're finding teachers, practitioners who are completely floaty woo woo,
yeah.
just think twice.
Saturn is about structure and about growing up, and it's about wisdom. And that's what we're here to do, spread wisdom. And it is not about being floaty woo-woo. It is not.
It isn't.
Not now, no. When Saturn was going through Pisces, yes.
Oh, yes, exactly. It had its
Absolutely.
moment. It had its moment.
But I
But
think we have to be very, very careful of the messianic tendencies of Neptune, and I do believe Neptune in Aries can bring a lot of false gurus too. So we've got to be very, very careful about what you believe and who you believe, and guess what? You are your own wisdom.
absolutely, it is always within you. I so believe that, Sue. That is a really important thing to reiterate, I think. Yeah.
Okie dokie. Well, we're going to be back again at some point. We don't know when, we don't know why, but we will be.
Will be. We will
And in
be.
the
Thank you.
meantime, thanks so much. I've loved having this conversation. And to everyone who's watching, God bless you all.